o'clock so I can go on and call the meeting to order, Angelica?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this is Teresa Adrian, presiding officer for the Code Enforcement Officers Advisory Committee meeting for Wednesday, December 8th, 2021. The time is 1 p.m. and we will call this meeting to order. I'm going to ask that everyone mute their microphones and then unmute your microphone at the time that you need to speak. And with that, I will turn it over to Angelica so that she can do roll call.
Yes, ma'am. Hubert McKinney,
Present.
Stuart Walker,
Present.
Christella Miles,
Present.
Matthew Christensen,
Present.
Annette Brown,
Present.
Jody Nike,
Present.
and Teresa Adrian, presiding officer.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Okay. So the next agenda item will be item C, which is the approval of the minutes. I am going to ask for a motion to approve and then a second. So do we have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes.
Stuart Walker, second.
So we have a motion to approve and a second for the meeting minutes of September 1, 2021. And I will ask Angelica to call for the vote.
Hubert McKinney,
Yes.
Stuart Walker,
Yes.
Christella Miles,
Yes.
Matthew Christensen,
Yes.
excuse me, Annette Brown,
Yes.
Jody Nike,
Yes.
and Teresa Adrian, presiding officer.
Yes.
Your motion passes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
The next item on the agenda is for public comments, and it's my understanding that we don't have any public comments.
Correct.
Okay, so we'll go on and proceed with the staff reports. And so Lisa Hodak, we will ask you to provide us an update on the licensing division.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well.
Okay, give me 1 second.
And I forgot to introduce myself, but I'm Lisa Hodak, the licensing manager.
I apologize. For some reason, I'm having little technical difficulties. Just 1 second.
I'll go ahead and start talking if that's okay.
Yeah, if you don't mind, for some reason my staff reports aren't coming.
I can do that because I know the first part of my report is about 2 new employees that I have on my team, and they are Megan Tucci and Linda Williams. Both of these ladies have already been working at TDLR. Linda was a temporary employee, and she was actually helping out with our elevator program. And Megan was on the licensing support team. And so they mail out the licenses and help with supplies and do all kinds of things in that team. But both the ladies are doing really well. I'm real proud of them. And they're continuing to learn a lot on my team. And that's all I remember off the top of my head until I see the numbers.
Okay, so while they're getting that information for you, as far as hiring folks and retaining folks, are you guys having some challenges like so many other organizations in getting good people and keeping them?
Yes and no. We never really know what the pool of applicants is going to be. We just sometimes have no idea. So really lucked out with these two because, you know, they've already been working with TDLR and we had already gotten to know them. And so they had some really great experience, which was wonderful for me. So it just depends on the job position and the pool of applicants. And as far as keeping people, And that's a yes and no as well. And what I mean by that is we have some people rotating around. So, for instance, the reason that I got these two people is because two of my team members moved up within the agency, actually within the division, and which is a wonderful thing for them. Sad for me, but good for them. So, we always encourage staff to apply and um, try to build on their career. And so I hope that answers your question. But
Yeah.
as far as keeping employees, not really. Just speaking from the whole division, I think we're doing pretty good for the most part. So very fortunate.
That's
Teresa, this is
great.
David Gonzalez with Licensing Services.
Yeah.
I just want to add that I expect across Texas, we're having the challenges of competing with the private sector. And Austin is a very expensive city to live in. And so we have had some challenges in that regard as far as being able to compete with private sector. I'm very glad that licensing division staff and our temporaries and other things that we have to draw employees has kept people applying for those jobs that Lisa needs, because we desperately need to keep those people with talents and skills. But it has become a little bit harder. Samsung, Tesla, all those businesses coming in, they're going to have the draw of more employees to other places. So I expect we're going to continue to see this challenge as long as Texas remains a wonderful place to come and do business.
Yeah, it really is a competitive work market for sure. So whether it's, government related or private sector, and I think that the private sector, I agree with you, David, those are our big competitors. And so doing things like TDLR is doing with the remote working or the hybrid of that, that is just one way to compete, because I know that's happening a lot in the private sector. All right, very good. Lisa, so do you want to go on and give us the update on your statistics?
Yes. And so thank you, Angelica. She was able to pull that up. The numbers overall for last year's total population for code enforcement was just over 2,400, and it has climbed to 2,425, and that includes September and October. And the code enforcement officer in training was at 102, and that has also climbed for September and October to 121. And that really concludes my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Is there anybody on the board that has a question? Seeing none, I have a question, actually. That 2425, how many cities does that represent? Out of curiosity, do you have that information?
I do not. I can try to pull that, and I'll try to see if I can pull that by the end of the meeting. So I will look into that, because I believe that information at least should be on our, like our dashboard or even our website. So
Okay.
I will look into that. If not, then I will try to pull that for you, and I can email it to the board, or we will work
Yeah.
on that for you.
I just
I
think that
don't
would
have it
be,
handy at the moment, though.
yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, you don't need to scramble to get it right now, but that would be something that is interesting to me, at least. How many cities does this represent? And, uh, I don't know how deep you can go into that data, but I'm curious, the population of those cities as well. We do a lot of benchmarking as code enforcement agencies to figure out, how to be right sized. And obviously each municipality is different and has a different set of needs and customer expectations. But I think that that would be useful information and just interesting, generally speaking.
I will certainly look into it for you.
I don't know if you've noticed this over the course of time, but I love all your data and statistics that you guys gather and provide to us. It is, we're a data-driven city, and the more data we have, the better information we have, the better decisions we can make. And I love what you guys provide to us. So thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thank you.
If there are no questions or comments, then we'll move on to item 2, which is the Customer Service Division, Jacqueline Rush.
Hi, good afternoon, board members. Happy to be here. This is Jacqueline Rush with Customer Service. I have some updates. The last time we spoke, I was letting you know that we had just concluded some interviews. And so the updates we've got for personnel updates include that the Customer Service Division has concluded the interviews, and we hired 7 new customer service representatives and 1 quality training performance analyst. The CSRs and the quality training performance analysts who came from our division began their roles at TDLR on October 1st. The CSRs that were selected have already been trained to follow a preset call workflow and use our nice and contact phone system to take calls and update our Dynamics 365 customer relationship management system with call notes for each call. The CSRs have learned how to escalate customer service inquiries that require a little bit more research to their team leads. And the details they include in these escalations help identify recurring pain points that point towards trends in customer experience and process improvement opportunities. The quality training and performance analyst will join 2 others, we call them QTPAs, in creating and producing reports, such as the ones that I'm about to share with you for our division. They develop and deliver our onboard training of new customer service representatives, and they assist with special projects from day to day, including technical troubleshooting. Um, so at this moment, we don't have a posting yet for a customer service manager, but I anticipate that will be coming soon. Our statistical reports include the number of calls and emails that we have received in fiscal years 2021 and 2022. Similar to what we shared during the meeting in September. You'll see fiscal year 2022, September, October looks very much like September and October of last year. So we're not seeing anything too remarkable in terms of changes or trends. Of course, people call us for assistance in just verifying that their applications are filled out correctly, checking license status, clarification on laws and rules, all kinds of things. But that concludes my report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any board members with any questions or comments? Well, kudos to the Customer Service Division. I would put you guys up against any organization from a customer service delivery aspect. I mean, all the way from the very beginning when you took code enforcement under your wing, which we are very thankful that you did, just the rollout during that time and everything since then is stock full of exceptional customer service delivery. And so thank you all very much for that. You're the frontline folks. You're the first point of contact that people have with TDLR. And, I'm so thankful that you represent, all of the various trades that you do, but especially for code enforcement. That means a lot that you're answering those phones, responding back to people. You're providing service to people across the state. And that's a big order to fill, and you guys do it well. So thank you so much for this information and the work that you do.
That means a lot. Thank you very much.
If there are no other questions, then we'll move on to the Enforcement Division. Amanda Barrera.
Hi, good afternoon, board members. My name is Amanda Barrera, and I'm a prosecutor in the Enforcement Division. Just 2 quick personnel updates since we last met. In September, Kim Mitchell was promoted to a Management Analyst 3. She worked for TDLR for 13 and a half years and was previously a legal assistant. Also, Estella Ramos was promoted to a Senior Legal Assistant in our intake section. Estella has worked with TDLR for 6 years, and she previously was an intake administrative assistant and a legal assistant. Congratulations to both Kim and Estella. So diving into our statistics, we first have it broken down here for you to see the comparison between the CEO program as well as TDLR as a whole. Today, we're discussing fiscal year 2022, which began on September 1st, 2021. Under these key statistics, you can see that so far in fiscal year 2022, we've opened 3 cases in this program. We closed 2 cases, and the average time to close was about 251 days. We have 0 cases that resulted in disciplinary action, and there are 18 cases that are pending from September 2021 of fiscal year 2021. If you look at the next graph, you can see where those cases have come from. About 2/3 of the cases are initiated by a consumer complaint, and the remaining third are criminal history cases. You can also see the outcomes of those cases. As I mentioned, there are no cases that resulted in disciplinary action so far in this fiscal year 2022. So we don't have any commission orders, default orders, or agreed orders, nor do we have any penalties or license sanctions. However, we did informally resolve 2 cases so far. At opening, we've opened 1 criminal history case and 1 unlicensed activity case. And included here in this materials are also the fiscal year 2021 that we discussed at the last meeting. So that's all I have for you today, and I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you, Amanda. Does anybody have any questions? I do have one question regarding the investigation of these complaints. At which time you complete the investigation, obviously the recipient of the complaint, the code officer who has received a complaint regarding, whatever is specific to that complaint, they're aware of that and they have the ability to provide a response to you. What is the return response? What is the response that code officer would get from TDLR once that case is closed? Is there any kind of formal response to the person who is the source of the complaint?
Yeah, so if the case is closed, whether that's closed for insufficient evidence or a warning letter was issued, a letter is generated to the respondent, who is the code enforcement officer or the unlicensed person, and it's also CC'd to the complainant as well. So they both know the formal determination of the case. There's also periodic updates that go out that if it's still pending, that the case is still being looked into.
Okay, and so you were saying the average turnaround time from start to finish, opening and closing a case, was 251 days, I think?
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is the average time to close.
Okay, and so that is from start to finish, from the time you receive the complaint to the time you close it formally or informally. If you close it informally, do you still do the outreach to the licensee and the complainant, letting them know the outcome?
Yes, they will get the letter letting them know that we closed the case for insufficient evidence, or whether we warrant the case, for whatever circumstances the prosecutor deems necessary.
All right, thank you.
Can I ask just one question about the unlicensed case? Was that someone out there posing as a code enforcement officer, or?
So generally, unlicensed cases in the CEO program come from a complainant who will state that they've noticed that a code enforcement or a person is calling themselves a code enforcement officer, whether that be on a website or signing tickets, and they themselves are not actually licensed to be a code enforcement officer or a code enforcement officer in training. Sometimes that could vary. Usually we try to get compliance to have them remove it. They may be unaware of not being able to use that title specifically.
Would that be applicable to someone who is conducting code enforcement with an expired license? Could that be a cause for that as well?
If they were identifying themselves as a code enforcement officer and their license is expired, we would reach out to them to tell them either to remove that title or to renew their license. That's generally the path that we take. We can also go the formal route and issue a notice of alleged violation for doing that.
Can I ask a question? Miss Adrian, and to the board.
Yes, this is Christilla Miles.
This is Christilla Miles. Question I had to ask, in regards to those type of cases, is there a questionnaire that is being sent to the person that is being investigated? And the reason why I'm asking this is because in some cities, you know, they practice code enforcement, but they don't use that title. They may say, I'm a neighborhood protections officer or community specialist or compliance. Is there a particular questionnaire with the verbiage for them to complete while you're doing that investigation?
So there's not a particular questionnaire. Those are generally questions that the investigators will ask. They will, obtain the evidence, look at the website and see exactly what they're calling themselves or whatever, whether they're evidence that the complainant claims that they're identifying themselves, and we make those determinations as prosecutors. You're correct. We do see some cities that use, a different variation of code enforcement officer, but what they can't use is the word code enforcement officer. So the prosecutor goes through all that through the investigations and what the evidence that they obtain to show what they're exactly using, and then we as the prosecutors will determine whether that's a violation of the statute or not.
Okay, so there is no standard form that is being sent. Okay.
There's no standard form, no ma'am.
This is Matthew Christensen. Amanda, I had a question in
Sure.
regard to the cases pending at the end of September 2021. Is that cases that are complaints that have not been investigated yet?
Those can vary. They could be an investigation or they could be with a prosecutor waiting to be reviewed. They could be anywhere within the process at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Out of curiosity, this is Teresa Adrian. Out of curiosity, how many prosecutors do you have or investigators do you have dedicated to? I'm sure that they're not just limited to code enforcement officer complaints. They probably just take in any and all complaints and get routed to
Right.
whoever has the least amount of caseload, or how does that work?
So on the building, we call ourselves the building and mechanical team for the prosecutors, and it's myself as well as Robert Reyes, and the cases get assigned to us just as they come. As far as investigators, I'm not entirely sure the exact number of investigators that work specifically on code enforcement, but I can definitely get that number for you.
I mean, 6,472 cases overall for TDLR. I mean, that's a lot, and so it's quite a workload. So I'm just curious, are they combined? They do multiple types of investigations, or do we have people that are specifically dedicated to code enforcement? Each of these trades are very different, and
Right.
so
I can definitely clarify that for investigations and how they're set up. Again, as far as prosecutors go, we are building mechanical, which includes the code enforcement officers, as well as air conditioning, electrical, sanitarian, and the whole slew of programs within that. So we do handle several programs, but we make sure that we give every program and every case the attention that it deserves.
This is Christilla Miles. I have another concern or question that I'd like to voice. In regards to these investigations, I know we said there's no standard format. Are these investigations being performed solely via phone, online, or are we doing them in person? Because I did notice that TDLR is in a process or advertising hiring investigators for different parts of Texas. So how are these investigations being conducted?
Well, during COVID, we've been a little limited. So most of our investigations now are via phone. We've been limited to that, so we haven't been able to do in-person investigations. We do have investigators all over the state. But they all focus on different things. I'm not exactly sure, as I mentioned, how many focus specifically on code enforcement. And I will definitely get that number for you guys to see if I can get it to you before the end of the meeting, or email it to you.
Amanda, I would think, this is Teresa Adrian, I would think that the the in-person versus online, email, on phone. It would just depend on the nature of the complaint as to, how it rises to an in-person, investigation versus something that you can do over the phone or online.
Absolutely.
So,
I know it does vary as well, even pre-COVID. If it was a complaint about an individual calling themselves a specifically code enforcement officer on a website, that's something that we could easily see on the internet and talk to that respondent via phone. So pre-COVID that varied. Post-COVID, I think the majority of it is over the phone or email.
okay. So the interim updates that you provide the licensees when there's been a complaint lodged against them, how often do you do those proactive interim updates to not only the complainant but the licensee?
The periodic letters are mailed. I don't know the exact amount of days that we send those out. I will get that information for you, but I think that has recently changed. So I will find out that information for you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Amanda, thank you so much for that update. Good information. Hey, item number 4 is Education and Examination Division, which is Michael Strawn. Hello, Michael.
Hello, good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Michael Strawn. I am the manager for Education Examination Division, and here to go over our stats that we have for you. First stats that we have up are our exam statistics. This fiscal year, we've only had 2 months that are on record. You'll see our average for this fiscal year is a 46% pass rate. Last year was a 57% pass rate. However, I always like to point out that as you can see from month to month, we have months that are 40%, some months that are higher. So it's a little early on in the year. Right now, we don't see any inconsistencies with the exam pass rates. And we always like to point out the fact that our subject matter experts and our staff here at the department continually look at our exams that we have. In fact, in November 16th and 17th, we met for our ERC, what we call the Exam Review Committee. It consists of subject matter experts across specific industries where they come in and look at poorly performing items, make sure that items are cited correctly, that we're making sure that we're building the best possible questions, that are making sure that people are safe and able to do their job by the law and the rules that are out there. So we continually look at those items to enhance our exams at all times. If you'll go down to the next one for me. Our I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
Can we go back to that pass rate for just a second? I don't want to interrupt you, but I'll forget if I don't ask this question right now. As far as the pass rate, have you seen any fluctuation in the pass rate for the basic code enforcement exam for the in-person, those that attend the class in person versus those that are doing the online week of training?
So it's a very good question. As you pointed out, we had rolled out earlier last year due to COVID the online written examinations that are now available. We can pull that information potentially from our vendor and look at it. We've done so in other areas. I don't know if in this industry if that's separated by a different type for our vendor to be able to separate those two. But certainly we can look at those pass rates to see if they are any different. Having looked at other industries, I can tell you that the pass rates are very similar, usually 1 to 2 to 3% higher. And I don't necessarily have an answer as to why that would be as far as causation or correlation. Some people have test anxiety with going someplace. Being in their home gives them a more comfortable, environment to test in, things like that. But we've seen that they're very much in line. They are the same exact test. You are sitting down in front of your computer. There's an individual watching you, much like in the same way that you would be taking your exam in person. You're just sitting at your own computer at that point in time. So we continue to look at those items to enhance our exams at all times. If you'll go down to the next one for me. Our continuing But it's something I can look at pulling those stats. I definitely cannot get them to you by the end of this meeting, but I can get with my vendor and make sure we can look at that, see if they're similar.
Yeah, so yeah, that component of it, yes, I agree. I understand the uptick in the success or the pass ratio for online exams versus in person. I think it is a more relaxed environment for folks. I'm actually talking about those that attend that week-long training. Teeks is the provider for that. I almost feel like they're the sole provider for this. I mean, we don't have a lot of providers out there, and they kind of have the market on that. I'm curious about the pass rate for those that attended an in-person training class versus those that attended online training. Is there a way to capture that data?
First of all, my apologies for misunderstanding your
No,
question.
it's okay.
Second of all, I would have to look into that. I don't know if we differentiate anywhere on our end as to who took what type of training. I would definitely have to get with our staff and look at that. That, you know, would come down to licensing, what they're capturing on the applications at that point in time. So I will need to get back to you on that question.
I would be curious to see what that data looks like, because that helps us who are sending folks to training. You know, if you're seeing that, you know, there's a pretty good success rate or a better pass rate for those that are attending in class, we might be a little cautious on sending people to online training, you know, and really opt to get them in that in-class environment where there's more engagement and participation. Uh, but yeah, if you can figure out a way to capture that kind of data in the future, that's something that I would certainly be interested in reviewing and having as a tool, you know, a management tool for us. So I
Absolutely.
don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on that.
This is Matthew Christensen. Absolutely. I absolutely agree. That would be a good indicator also for providers, Teeks, in how the classes might need to change a bit if we have a lower pass rate, you know, if it's not equitable to online and in person. I think that's an excellent point. And maybe we could put something in the application when they apply for the test to ask, did you take it online or did you, something very simple. I absolutely agree. Good point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry to derail you, Michael, but please go ahead and continue.
Absolutely. This fiscal year, we've added one new provider registration, so we're up to 19 at this point in time. So pretty steady on our CE providers at this point. We wanted to point out an update, and we're bringing this to every single one of our industries. You heard Jacqueline from customer service talking earlier about Dynamics. It's an extremely effective tool, and TDLR or E&E education examination is adopting the same Dynamics 365 system that they are using. And what that means is that right now our education division has served our communities using specific proxy boxes for every one of our industries that we have. And that causes our employees to have to monitor, you know, 15, 30, 40 different inboxes. And instead, the dynamic system is now going to allow us to receive everything into one area. The system's able to track that, look and to see what we're getting the most contacts about, what industries are giving the most contacts, and what those pain points are. You kind of heard Jacqueline talking about that, and that's going to allow our division to work smarter, address concerns, reach out to individuals, make sure if there is an educational opportunity, a website enhancement needs to happen, you know, that we're able to work smarter in those regards and better serve the public. And as such, we've begun to transition away from having the multiple inboxes to this web form. So on our website now, when it goes to contact TDLR, you will have a web form that pops up. You'll select anything from any number of industries you're contacting us about, fill out your information, what your general inquiries about, an area to add, your comments, upload files, whatever you need to do. That information comes to us. is collated, and then we're able to work it from there rather than having to manage different areas, and provides us, as you talked about, that data-driven information helps you make decisions that are better for the citizens of Texas, for the industry that we serve, and for our employees as well to be able to better serve everyone around them. With that being said, that concludes my report, and I'm open to any questions that you all have.
Are there any questions? TDLR is in a constant cycle of process improvement. And it is, I love hearing what you guys are doing and just really appreciate it. I mean, we're your customer and we benefit from all of the innovation and the process improvements and the streamlining that you do as an organization. We're the beneficiaries. So thank you so much.
Mary Winston, TDLR Chairwoman, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for acknowledging that. Everyone internally knows that we're kind of in a constant cycle, and I know our Deputy Executive Director will touch on that in the executive report. But your acknowledgement is so appreciated, and for all staff watching, that is a great boost, so thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Miss Adrian, real quick, we have Amanda Barrera. She has the answers to the 2 questions you had earlier.
Okay, great.
Hi, Amanda Barrera with the prosecutor with the Enforcement Division. So I do have the answers to your 2 questions. So we have 2 investigators that are dedicated to the Code Enforcement Officers Program, and we send those quarterly updates every 180 days.
Thank you so much. Hi. So moving on, if no one has any other comments or questions, last call for that. We are going to move on to the Regulatory Program Management Division, Rick Garza.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rick Garza. I'm the multi-program specialist for the RPM division. Current projects that my routine job duties is to assist licensing and the public in questions on license applications, both internal and external. One of the biggest questions I get is the rural areas is how do I become a code enforcement officer? So there's a lot of communities that are looking to provide that. On public outreach, on October 6th, I attended the Texas Environmental Health Association meeting where I manned a booth and also gave a presentation to the association. Since then, there's been 2 other items that I have not been able to, that I did not put on here. And one is that I also attended the South Texas Environmental Health Association meeting where I manned a booth and gave a presentation there also. And then I also did a ride along with the South Padre Island the town of South Padre Island with their code enforcement officer while I was there attending this meeting. Just future outreach, I expect to get more requests for legislative information for THAW and any other associations that would like. And that pretty much includes my presentation.
Thank you, Rick. Is there anyone that has any questions for him? Out of curiosity, those conferences that you attended, what type of in-person attendance did you experience there? I know that attendance has been down for a lot of conferences.
The annual Texas Environmental Health Association, I'm going to estimate that there was at least between 200 and 300 people there. At South Padre Island, there was probably about 50 to 60 code enforcement and sanitarians that attended that program.
Okay.
Hey,
Which is
Rick,
not bad for the, they're down there at the southern tip, so, I mean, you're going to have less attendance, but that THAW conference, that is a good indicator that things are trying to get back to the new normal, whatever that is. So that's great. What did you think about your, how was your ride along? Did you have any aha moments or?
I did. Through all my ride-alongs, I experienced different job duties that code enforcement officers uh, do in different communities, cities, municipalities. And one issue that I thought was very interesting is how code enforcement officers assist law enforcement and actually ride the beaches pertaining to glass, littering, and things like that on the beaches. Uh, Unless you're on a beach, you're not going to have that. So it was very interesting to see that code enforcement was doing that part on the beach.
The many hats of code
Yes,
enforcement.
and it changes. It changed with COVID and continues to change. Uh, One of the biggest challenges I see is the increase of population in the state of Texas and how that's going to affect a lot of municipalities that may not necessarily have code enforcement officers. They may have different titles and do the same job, but more and more are slowly but surely are wanting to register their officers as code enforcement officers.
Which is great. That's great for the profession and the industry. Thank you so much for that report. Last but not least, I am not going to forget you two this time, our executive office, David Gonzalez and Mary Winston. Good to see you both.
Good afternoon, Presiding Officer Adrian, Advisory Board members. I appreciate you not leaving us out. Start off with acknowledging y'all's contributions to our efforts these past few years. These questions, they are what keep us sharp. They are what keep our staff on our toes. We do have 39 different programs that we're dealing with, but each one deserves the attention that y'all are providing to this program. So definitely thank y'all for the questions so that we can have stats and ask questions of our vendors and ask questions of the public that are going to help track what's important to this program. So thank you for that. The 87th and bill implementation, it's kind of a standing item on our reports these days because the session is over, but the work that comes out of it is not. We have bills that we're still implementing. There's work still to be done on some of the bigger programs. I shared with you last time that we made it through our sunset review, and so we're good for another 12 years. But as part of that bill, HP 1516, there was a lot of other things that have to be accomplished, including the merger of our barber and cosmetology programs. There's some programs being deregulated. There wasn't a lot to affect code enforcement, but it's important that we maintain at least the status quo, if not making improvements on the things that we need to. So I'm just here to report that we have several bill implementation teams still working on implementation of things. We do provide communications via the list server on our website. So if you have not signed on to those programs you're interested in, that is the way we keep tabs on everybody and get the information out. And I'll just give you some foresight of what's important. We're coming into December. Strategic planning for this agency is just around the corner, and usually our bill implementation team stuff kind of overlaps our strategic planning. If you've been here, every 2 years, we go through strategic planning. We typically visit different cities, or we have something virtually that allows for input from all of the different programs that we oversee and allows them to be kings and queens for the day and tell us what we could be doing better, what laws or rules that they would change if they were king or queen for the day, what things that we need to improve upon. All those questions will be asked, and we're not going to be doing anything any different this go around. So just be looking for that in early March is when we usually start the process and start putting things on our website. So that's just a heads up. I guess we could do statistics now, Miss Mary, unless I'm forgetting something.
David, I think that's all on the agenda that we can cover today.
Thank you, ma'am.
So, yes, our statistics, which is our informal kind of review of how you're reaching out, how folks who are interested in code enforcement are reaching out. Over the past 6 months, from July 1st to November 30th, Code Enforcement Officer's website or web page has averaged about 144 views per day. So yes, we count the clicks. 57% of those are from desktop computer, 41% are from smartphones, 2% from tablets. Tablets aren't getting much love here. Top reasons for visiting the sites: how to apply to be a code enforcement officer in training, examination requirements, laws and rules, applying for a new enforcement officer registration, and frequently asked questions. All great topics. This lets us know that we are including what is necessary on our website and how many folks, and if it's still valid for the folks who are coming there to take a look. And is all interested in how to become one, how to do it right, and what's going on in the profession. So that wraps up our executive report, unless someone has any questions.
This is Crystal Miles. I have a question, Miss Mary and Mr. Davis.
Uh-huh.
Mr. Garza, one of the things that's being brought up quite often is when the code officers are getting ready to renew their licenses, the legislative update classes, like you said, you just got out of session. I did some research on the last session, and a lot of the stuff pertained to the homeowner associations and, you know, your Texas property codes that were being passed. So would it be acceptable when you provide training to code enforcement officers to use that material so that they can earn those 2 mandatory hours that they are required to have? When you do your training, is there a particular item that they have to be trained on, or does it vary? Is it okay to use those topics as part of the training?
Yes, I would say so. I mainly focus on TDLR changes and updates. But I would say yes, that would play a role.
Suffice.
Yes, that would suffice.
And for the record, that was Rick Garza from our Regulatory Program
Sorry
Management.
about that.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you,
And
Rick.
if Michael Ford Strong, Mary Winston, if Michael Ford Strong had anything to add from A&E, we would take that. But I think Rick has answered the question thus far.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I believe any legislative change that pertains to code enforcement officers would fit under that category.
Good question. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Mr. Gonzalez, Ms. Winston, thank you both so much for that update. And this is totally out of line, but Mary, I have to tell you, your hairdo is adorable. It looks fantastic.
Thank you. Since you said that, Angelica's like laughing because when we have to do information requests and we have to go back and watch these things over and over and over. And she said, "You changed your hair so much. I can tell what year." I told her it's my superpower. That's what it is.
I wish I had that superpower, and the curls, I love them. So, okay, so we'll move on. We
David
digress a
Gonzalez
little
from
bit.
Sage. I'm sorry, point of order here. I really worked hard on my hair today, so it's very competitive here at TDLR. Just kidding.
That's great. Okay, so item F, which is the discussion and possible recommendations for the proposed amendments to existing rules at 16 Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 62, 62.20, and 62.80 regarding the Code Enforcement Officers Program. And I am going to call on Dalma Sotero.
Thank you. Madam Chair. Let me try to share the screen here. Can you all see it? Okay, perfect. So good afternoon. My name is Dalma Sotero, Assistant General Counsel for the department, and I'm going to be presenting the agenda item F. These proposed rules were discussed during the last meeting on September the 1st of this year and were recommended by this committee to be published in the Texas Register. As a reminder, the proposed rules amend section 62.20C to improve readability by using the plain talk guidelines and also provide a 2-year registration term to the code enforcement officer in training who upgrades the registration certificate to a code enforcement officer, and also amend section 62.80D to include the renewal fee into the upgrade process. So this is why you're going to see the proposed changes here and 6280 here. So the proposed rules were published in the Texas Register on September 24th. In the 30-day period to receive public comments closed on October 25th. And during that period, the department received 3 public comments. I understand that you have them in your packages. The first comment was not related to the program, therefore it was considered as out of the scope of the proposed rules, and the department did not make changes to the proposed rules based on that comment. The second comment was in support of the proposed rules, expressing that the amendments would make the transition more effective and easier to understand. And the department appreciates the comment and did not make changes as a result of this comment. The third comment recommended an amendment to section 62.24 to include the topic of officer safety as a continuing education course. This is like a section, the 6224 was not included as part of the proposed changes to the rules. Therefore, the comment is out of the scope of the proposed rules. The department did not make changes to the proposed rules based on that comment, but the suggestion may be included in future rulemaking. In summary, there were no changes made to the proposed rules as a result of the public comments. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions? Okay, Dalma, thank you so much for that update. And I guess it's business as normal. I mean, we are just trudging forward with no changes, right? So,
Yes, with no changes, that will be the recommendation of the department to seek for a motion to recommend the commission to adopt the proposed rules as published in the Texas Register.
okay. What is the timeline for that?
To be before the commission?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this would go to the next commission meeting, but I don't have a specific date right now. But if it's in January, we will present them in January. If it's in February, we will do it as well. So just during the next one.
Okay.
We are targeting to have this proposal effective around March, but I don't have a specific date.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So without further ado, we're at item G, which is recommendations for agenda items for the next advisory committee meeting. And so are there any recommendations from the committee?
Did we take a vote?
Oh, well,
Haven't.
I am so sorry.
We'll need a motion for item F.
Okay, so yeah, we will, I'll call for a motion on recommending those proposed amendments. Is there a motion?
Matthew Christensen. I move that we accept the changes as published in the Texas Register.
Do we have a
Stuart Walker.
second?
Stuart Walker, a second.
So Matthew Christensen made the motion and Stuart Walker seconded that motion. And so, Angelica, if you will call for a vote.
Yes, ma'am. Hubert McKinney,
Yes, vote for the changes.
Stuart Walker,
Yes.
Christella Miles. Got a nod.
Yes.
Matthew Christensen,
Yes.
Annette Brown. Might have lost her. I'll come back. Jody Nike.
Yes.
Teresa Adrian, presiding officer.
Yes.
I'll try Annette Brown one more time. Miss Annette Brown? Without her, your motion still passes.
Thank you. She was having some connectivity issues earlier. Thank you for keeping me on track. Appreciate y'all. Okay, so now on to agenda items for the next advisory committee meeting. Do we have any recommendations from the committee?
This is Crystal Miles. I would like to discuss education for code enforcement officers. We have a lot of vendors that are coming who are not in the state of Texas who want to be able to provide education. I want to discuss maybe if the information that's being shared with them will be approved by TDLR. Is it acceptable?
This is David Gonzalez, Deputy Executive Director, Licensing Services. Mary, we have work groups assigned for this group. I know it's been a little while. Is that something appropriate for a work group as well that could allow for discussion in between our next advisory board meeting and then have a presentation at the time of the advisory?
David, I was Mary Winston. Ford was typing a message to me as you were talking about a work group. So Ms. Miles, Ford, he popped back on. Did you want to kind of address maybe taking this?
Absolutely. I think it's Michael Strawn. It's a great question. Ford's my middle name. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Michael.
But I think it's a great question and something, Rick touched on just a minute ago. It is something we've been looking at through multiple industries. We do have our work groups, and it's actually what I was telling Mary and David is like, hey, this perfect opportunity when we have these work groups to bring you all in. It's a perfect representation of what you all do and the insight y'all can provide us. I don't want to sit here today and say, yes, I will bless all of these things. It's something we really should dive into, look at what trainings are out there, what information is being provided, how those fit into our current rules. And if needed, we bring in our general counsel to update our rules and make changes to those rules out there to better fit the industry and the ever-growing changes and needs that we have out there. So I think it's something I would definitely see going to a work group and making those recommendations for.
So before our next meeting, TDLR, Mary Winston here, we can, Ms. Miles, I think we already have a work group for education and examination, and we will get staff to reach out. And I don't know, Angelica, do you have the names of that work
So
group
for
available?
education examination, we have Matthew Christensen and Teresa Adrian.
Okay, so that is the work group that would be, those are the folks who would be contacted to initially discuss that. David?
This is David Gonzalez, Deputy Executive Director. With the size of this board, it might allow for, if Priscilla Miles was particularly interested in this, for a few more appointments, Miss Adrian, if there's a few more interested in participating.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
If possible, Crystal Miles, I am very much interested in that. It's up to the chair.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Crystal would be an excellent appointment to that work group, and the more the merrier. I would love to see us discussing the expansion of training topics as well.
Okay, as another topic. Okay.
Yes, thank you so
Michael.
much.
Michael Strawn, TDLR, and that's perfect. I will get with Marion and Angelica after this meeting, and we will reach out to you all. I don't know, Mary, do we have to officially add her, Christilla, to the work group, or can that be done?
We do not have to officially add her because it's not an act that we do. It is the chairwoman's choice. So I love it that she's volunteering and not being voluntold, because sometimes folks end up on these work groups because they just didn't show up to the meeting. So Ms. Miles, thank you. And to get this on the agenda for our next meeting, we'll definitely have to have a little time to kind of vet the subject, have the meeting to bring the topic back for the next meeting that we have.
And this is Teresa Adrian, and I'm assuming that those work group discussions can be held virtually as well?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Ford will be calling you. Michael will be calling. Yes, Mr. Christensen.
Pardon me. Yeah, one of the things that also, I'm getting some feedback from the instructors for the basic code enforcement officer class that participants are asking that the class should be a little bit longer. They don't feel that they're able to get the all of the information that they need. There's just so much information. So maybe another topic might be the possibility of extending the class for, I'm not thinking a significant amount, but, it's 36 hours now, possibly 40 hours. But whatever it might be, I'd like to talk about that at some point, or I'd like us to discuss it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Matthew, I like that you're bringing that up. What we're doing here, this is Teresa Adrian. What we're doing here in Irving, I reached out to TEEX and was able to get copies of the basic code enforcement books, and am doing study groups with those in my department that are going to be attending that class in the near future and taking the exam. And I am a strong proponent of doing something like that and pushing that concept out to the code organizations out there, the jurisdictions that are sending their basic or their code enforcement officers to attend that class. I don't think that they should step into that class and that be the first time that they've looked in that book. I think that's part of the problem, and I think that is part of the failure rate that we're seeing. Yeah, Matthew is completely correct. You can't send somebody to 36 hours of training and expect them to be prepared to take that exam. Likewise, there's also a delay from the time they complete the class until they complete all of the online processing that has to occur that gets them eligible to go take that exam. And so if they're spending 36 hours in the class, in the book, and that's it, odds are they're not gonna pass the exam. One, it wasn't enough time because it is a huge learning curve, and two, there's that lapse that occurs before they can take the exam. So, I think that it is upon us as code agencies across the state to be boosting opportunities for people to spend time studying it so that when they get to that class, it's not brand new to them. And I don't know how we can push that out, but David, I see you raising your hand. Please pipe in.
David Gonzalez, Deputy Executive Director. This is wonderful input. So don't blow it all here. We need to record everything you just said so we can discuss it on the next agenda item, because this is the topics that we want to be able to have in a work group and then discussion where everybody could give notice on it. And if they had some public comments, their own participant, they'll have the chance to give that as well. So thank you for that introduction.
So are there any other topics of interest to the committee that we can ask TDLR to bring back for the next meeting as an agenda item?
I do have one more, Ms. Adrian, Christella Miles again, City of Houston Division Manager. One of the things that we discussed recently here in our organization was the number of attempts for taking the basic code enforcement officer exam. I know we're looking at the success rate right now and the failure rate. Is there any type of specific clause that TDLR has in place that said if you take it twice, then you have to wait a 6-month period before you go back and take it again, or you get 3 attempts and that's it? Or I want to kind of discuss and hit on that just a little bit. I see you shaking your head, David, like this.
Sorry, I had to get myself unmuted. Michael Strawn, TDLR. No,
Okay.
there is no wait period that we force you into, or automatic retraining required after so many exams. You're basically be held to the area you're going to test in, how quickly you can get in with your schedule, the availability to get scheduled for that testing site. But we do not limit the number of tests that you can take.
So we're answering questions that we want to not do right now, just not as part of the agenda. but the head nods or shakes and everything, we're there. It looks like the next meeting is going to be education heavy. Michael is always ready to handle that task. Ms. Miles, I think you are going to be a wonderful addition to this. I know you will, to this work group. And so if we don't have any other topics right now, I say this after most or at the end of most every meeting, you all can send topics to advisory.boards@tdlr.texas.gov. And that's a way we have that email. We can get them on the agenda. We can discuss or whatever. We like to have a single stream of connectivity so we can kind of disperse it and to the necessary folks. But if there is nothing else right now that anyone can think of that they want to discuss, you have time. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Winston, on that. I do have one topic that I would like to see at the next meeting, and that is just an update on all of the work groups. Just as a reminder to the committee, what are the work groups and the topics, and see if we have an interest from committee members to serve in that capacity, because we've had a lot of changes to this committee since it was first formed. So if you could add that one to it, I think it
Yes.
would be great.
That's a good one as well. When we do change members, we do need to update work groups. So that will be fantastic.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no other agenda items requested by the committee, then we'll move on to item H, which is the discussion of date, time, and location of the next advisory committee meeting. And I think that we'll just hear back from Angelica with that via email. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. So with that said, we are at a time where we will adjourn this meeting. I believe it is 2:06 p.m. on December 8th, 2021. And I want to thank everybody for their attendance today and their participation. These were great discussions today. And lastly, thank TDLR for providing us the level of service that you do in all of the different divisions. It's greatly appreciated, and we look forward to seeing you at the next meeting, and I want to wish everybody a safe and happy holiday season.
Thanks so much. Happy holidays,
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you for
Happy
being here.
holidays.
Thank you.